Your people will rebuild the ancient ruins and will raise up the age-old foundations. You will be called repairer of broken walls, restorer of streets with dwellings. Isaiah 58:12, NIV. Welcome to Outreach Connection, focusing on topics and issues that reach our communities with the love and power of Jesus Christ.
And welcome again, my friends, to another exciting Outreach Connection episode. I'm Dr. Peppers, shaking the salt. I love Psalm 139. As a matter of fact, I put it to music one time, and I'll just do the first part. Bear with me. Thou hast searched me, thou hast known me, mine every thought you understand. You plan my path and you guide me, always knowing where I am. And you know what I say before I say it, for the hand of your blessing is on me. And I went on through each of these verses, and the one that I really love is based on 139, starting with verse 15. My substance, my being, my body was not hidden from you, my Creator. I was made in secret, and your eyes I saw even before you gave me breath. My very life you did plan. And it says, you were with me in my mother's womb. You formed me intricately in my mother's womb. How precious are your thoughts, O Lord. You know, when we see something like this, and having just been to a couple of baby showers recently, I love that even there the expectant moms were showing around their ultrasound, and I'm showing it's a boy, no, it's a little girl, I've got twins, and all of the gifts and the celebration. Nobody ever says I'm going to have a fetus. They say I'm going to have a baby, and they know that it's a baby. Deep in our souls, deep in our hearts, it is written, and we know it, and Scripture says it. And yet, what have we wrought? So I have with me today one who's doing something about it. And wherever you are and whatever your part is, everybody has to join this giant chain that we're doing. I call this group the gatekeepers, because these are the people that are willing to step up, step out, and lobby in the state capitals. With me today is one of those. He's a lobbyist, folks. Ooh, in Illinois. Zack Wittman, thanks for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
How long have you been at this position?
I'm just about to celebrate my 10th anniversary. So 10 years, yeah.
10 years.
That's right.
Have you changed anything?
You know, I think we've done some good. I think we've changed some minds. I don't know how many laws we've changed, but we try every year. And
every year, the more you get in there and the more issue you have made with it. Now, the real reason that you're here at this time is because, believe it or not, in the state of Illinois, there is a great Opportunity Act coming up, and I'm going to let Zack explain this.
Sure. We've introduced a piece of legislation called the Ultrasound Opportunity Act. And what this legislation would do is require medical professionals who are working at clinics or other facilities that offer abortions to offer the woman seeking an abortion an opportunity to view the ultrasound. What we know now is that law and good medical practice require these ultrasounds to be performed before abortions. They always do an ultrasound to find out how big the baby is, the location of the baby. All of these things they would need to know, unfortunately, to go forward with an abortion. So they do the ultrasounds, but they hide them right now from those women.
And why do you think that is?
Well, I think the main reason is, if you look at the research on this, over 80% of the women who see an ultrasound of their baby, of course it depends on the gestational age, but over 80% of the women who see the ultrasound of their baby decide not to get an abortion.
Hello, what does that tell you? Because what are they seeing?
They're seeing hands, feet, heartbeats, legs, arms, faces. You know, there's no way you can view an ultrasound and say, that's a glob of tissue.
That's right.
That's not a human being. It's impossible. So we have this wonderful technology that, doctors are taking advantage of. Let's have everybody take advantage of it.
That is excellent. And that is just so sensical. And I know for those of you that have ever worked with or been a part of any of the pro-life groups, some of the statistics, well, we'll let you tell us some of the things that you know. For instance, the heartbeat starts,
what,
10 days?
Yes, very early, yeah, that's right. And in our bill, we actually We don't require the ultrasound offer until after 6 weeks gestational age. And the way we came up with that date is not because, obviously, a baby at 4 weeks gestational age is worth everything that anybody else is. But the technology, and we've worked with crisis pregnancy centers who offer services to women in distress,
Yes.
and what they tell us is that they won't do the ultrasound before 6 weeks because the technology is not yet advanced enough that you can see anything that they think, it feeds in. What they say is what you see before the 6 weeks feeds into this glob of tissue theory that our opponents always put forward. So we look forward to the day when the technology will improve enough to be able to see even before that.
Right.
Because obviously our view is that from the moment of conception,
yes.
That is a human life and worthy of all the protection and dignity that anybody else is.
What Scripture tells us as well, and I think that's what we know in our hearts.
That's right.
I mean, before all of this was available, before all of this technology, I mean, people knew, and that's why we would call them the back alley abortions. And but there weren't, the blatant open issues. I'm a retired high school teacher, and we literally have had counselors driving girls to the abortion clinic without the consent of the parent, without the parent's knowledge, and having the abortion, and the parent may or may not ever find out about it.
That's right. In Illinois, we were speaking earlier, there actually is a parental notice law that was passed in 1995, signed by the governor. It's in law, but it's been tied up in the courts, first the state courts and now the federal courts since then. So we're talking 16 years later, and it's still not enacted.
I just don't get it. I just don't get it.
It's the length that our opponents will go to prevent, in this case, what is, a 16-year-old girl couldn't get an aspirin at school without their parents' permission.
That's right.
But in Illinois, they can get an abortion.
Yes.
Yeah.
So if you can't get an aspirin, if you can't get your ears pierced, if you can't do certain other things, but you can go to a clinic where there is no doctor that the parents know, taken there by somebody perhaps the parents don't know, and we're talking 13, 14, 15-year-olds. We're not talking always, adult women who just is an inconvenience because they have too many children. And the question especially with this would apply to only what ages?
Every age. Any abortion it would apply to. So any woman who was seeking an abortion would have to be offered the opportunity to view an ultrasound.
Every single... And I don't know if any of you have never seen an ultrasound or not, but when you do, and when, as Zack said, you see little hands and little fingers, and of course nowadays we have even seen things such as where doctors are able, say in the 6th month, to actually remove the baby, keeping the umbilical cord, do surgery on some aspect of the child, bring the child back in, let him continue to maturation, and I mean, at this point, at 6 months, women are choosing, and it is a choice that they make, to have the abortion. But the choice is not there for the baby, is it?
No, of course the baby has no choice, unfortunately. And what you speak to, I think, is important in that we seek, and the church seeks, not just to outlaw abortion, but to make it unwanted, so that people no longer view it as a viable option. And the science is on our side, and of course Scripture's on our side, and God is on our side. But now we're also seeing medical technology coming on our side and proving this. And my hope is that this will start to turn the tide. And that's why we picked this particular piece of legislation to go. I mean, there's a lot of good pro-life pieces of legislation out there that you could choose to promote. This is the one we focused on because of those benefits.
And this, I see, too, is kind of the gate. We're talking, I made it into an assembly line because the people that are standing at the abortion clinics wanting the girls to come see an ultrasound, that's the very last-ditch effort. At that last minute before they walk in, it's either saved or not saved baby. And so Zack and his kind of the whole lobbying group, or anyone, and how can the voters, especially in the state of Illinois who are watching this, can they make a difference to help you out with this?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, my main message when I go out and talk to people, and I do that quite a lot, is elections have consequences. So it's not good enough to say, if you look at polls, people say, well, we don't like Congress and we think they're doing a bad job. But then when you ask them about their individual legislators, they say, oh, yeah, he's a nice guy. I like him. Or he's a nice woman. I like her. Well, that's not enough, okay? What they're going to be working on, policies that are going to shape our culture. So whether you like them, whether they're nice, whether they're not, is not irrelevant, but it's not the most important thing. The most important thing is what are they going to do when they get there?
Yes.
How are they going to vote on issues like this? How are they going to help shape our culture?
Yes.
President Bush always talked about changing our culture and changing the hearts and minds of people on this issue. And I really think that's the right approach. I mean, laws are important and elections are important, but until we change the hearts and minds of the people who are voting, we're not going to see the changes in the public policies that we want. Yeah.
And when you're lobbying, do you know as a lobbyist who the candidates will be? Because those of you that are getting ready to vote, when we elect the people, do you actually seek how have they voted in the past, what stance have they taken in the past if they have not been in a public service? Have they also, any record where they have been with a group or any kind of a life group or a proactive group in any side of the fact? And there are those records available.
Absolutely. And one of the great things, of course, the internet has pluses and minuses.
Sure.
One of the great things about it is that there are so many political blogs and voters' guides and records of what every politician does. So this information is readily available.
Right.
And if you don't want to look it up yourself, you can call our office and we'll give it to you. Sure.
Go ahead and give that information out too, because Zack is willing to give you his information, and you can reach him through the organization. Of course, he's a lobbyist supported by Catholic Conference of Illinois. Is that right?
That's correct.
CatholicConferenceofIllinois.org.
Correct.
And that's www. Of course, you don't even have to put that in front of it.
Right.
And the phone number is 217-488-2256. Now, many of our viewers would like to know how you are supported through a church, because how does this work in lobbying in a political atmosphere?
It's a very interesting and difficult intersection of religion and politics. So I am funded by the church. Our organization is funded by the 6 dioceses of Illinois, who pay the Catholic Conference of Illinois to represent the church teachings in the interest of the church in Springfield. Now, because we're a church and a nonprofit, we are prohibited from certain lobbying activities. We don't work in campaigns. We can't endorse candidates. We can't, give money to candidates. All of those things would violate the nonprofit laws of the IRS and things like that. So we don't do any of that. What we do is try to talk to legislators about what is right, what is wrong, and what it is their constituents, and that's the most important part, what is it their constituents believe is right or wrong, and to respond to that. So we really do play the political lobbying game with both arms tied behind our back. Our opponents form PACs and things of that nature to fund candidates and run that, and that's a difficult thing, but we keep working against it. And
they do recognize your power, that you do have a say and a voice in this.
Sure, and the best way we demonstrate that is we will often send out action alerts or other information telling people, the Ultrasound Opportunity Act is going to be up for a vote in the next 2 weeks. Call your legislator and tell them to vote for that. And the more people that respond the more calls they get, the more power, and I don't really care about the word power, but the more influence it is we have there in Springfield, and the more that these legislators think, well, because the first thing in every legislator's mind is, how do I get reelected? That's the first thing. You got it. And so if they're hearing from a lot of their constituents to do this or that, they're going to do that. So
folks in Illinois can even start with this, because this is coming up in January. And if you were to just kind of pick up the phone and make, a few calls, I know that people think, well, what is one call really going to make a difference? Well, I've talked with a whole lot of politicians, and Zack, what do you say about that?
Absolutely, it makes a difference. In the state, and I work in the state level, and what a lot of those legislators will tell me is that one call to them represents, depends on who you're talking to, but as many as 25 other voters who feel the same way, but a lot of people don't like to get involved in this, they don't call. So absolutely, every call, every letter, every email counts. And they're recorded, and people can make sure that their voice has been heard. So let's do that before January, and you can even get your friends, your neighbors, your church family, your home family, everybody else, make the calls. And if you got 25 people to make the calls, 25 times 25 is whatever it is, because I'm not a mathematician. It's a lot, yeah. Okay, let's say you have 20 people making 20 calls. There you have 400. There you go. Okay, so this is one of the areas and the arena in which you do this. Now, is there anything else that viewers or
people that are in the areas and their own legislature can they do?
Well, all those things that I talked about that the church can't do, any individual person can do and
they
should
can make
do.
Donations to the
Yes, you can make donations to candidates who are supportive. You can work in their campaigns. You can go to their campaign rallies. I mean, there's so much you can do to support them and should do. I mean, this is how our democracy works.
Yes.
It requires participation of the electorate. Unfortunately, we only have about 50% right now. We need more of that, especially from the people who view the world as we do. And so, yeah, absolutely, there's a lot you can and should do.
Yeah. Before we went on air, I was talking to you about being very kind of a minority of a conservative in a liberal world. And, of course, we often think just, any place I go in the United States and you talk about Illinois politics, you think immediately Chicago, you think of all of the racketeering, you think of, all of the issues that are, very, very liberal to most people's minds. And now we picture Zack up here in Springfield and just, having this opportunity to stand there. I'm literally picturing him with his hands behind his back like this, as he said, with his hands tied. But the voice, the body, and the main thing, when you get to actually speak, and you actually speak individually as well as collectively.
Sure, you talk to legislators one-on-one, you testify in committee hearings, you hold events that legislators come to. A lot of times we'll have the bishops in Springfield, and we'll invite the legislators over to share a meal with them, talk to them about these issues, things like that. So there's still a lot of avenues open to us to communicate with our legislators, and there's a lot of avenues to, every person in the state to do so.
And probably they would let you know if they are pro-life.
Oh yeah, it's usually not hard to tell. Yeah, that's right. There are those who we would not identify as pro-life, but who would vote on an issue like this our way.
Okay.
And so the challenge is, you can't be, although your first inclination is to say, if you don't believe that that's a human life from conception and will do anything to save that baby from the very get-go, then I don't want anything to do with you. Well, okay, that's a viewpoint, but in politics it doesn't work. If you want these votes, you want to pass these kind of legislations, you've got to talk to people who will say, many legislators say to me, well, I'm pro-choice, or my district is pro-choice, but I can give you this vote because I see that this is important, and I agree that this is good medical technology that should be used. And of course, we're thankful for that.
Well, yes, absolutely. And how do you get that information out then without it being a candidate endorsement?
Well, what we do, what we do often is publish the votes.
Okay.
Okay, so we'll put that on our website, and that's not an endorsement of any particular candidate.
This
is what you did. It's public information.
Right.
We'll get that out. We'll also let constituents know if a legislator tells us, yes, I'm going to vote for this. We'll tell them that. There's no problem with that. Sure.
And then if they don't vote for that,
we tell them too. We tell everybody that too. Yeah.
There you go. And this is just the facts, ma'am. The facts.
That's right. That's right.
Okay, so for those of you that you really believe that the choice and the difference between pro-choice is actually you're either for abortion or you're not. And depending on the degrees of it, you might say, well, in the case of this, or in the case of that, or in the case of that. There are a lot of little minute tangents we can get off on. But if you can get a solid vote that says, I will indeed support this act, tell us a little bit about how this act is written.
Well, basically what it says is that if a woman comes into an abortion clinic or any other facility that offers abortions...
And it could be Planned Parenthood,
sure.
It could be even a doctor's clinic.
Anything, right. Okay. Anything where they're offering abortions, that's how it's written. And she is, as I said, past 6 weeks, the baby's past 6 weeks in its gestational age, then that doctor or another medical professional must offer the woman an opportunity to view the ultrasound.
Doesn't mean they will.
It does not mean they will. There are some states that have been able to pass legislation that says you have to show me ultrasound. Yeah. And I would love to be able to do that, but the politics are what they are in Illinois, so we work within the realm of the possible. And so they would offer the ultrasound. The woman says yes or no, and they have to document that answer and then file the information with the Department of Human Services. So it's, I'm sorry, the Department of Public Health. So it's something that we can go and look at later to say, look, what difference is this making? How many women are saying yes? And
really?
Yeah. And of course, we would not add, the woman's name is never part of this.
Yeah, right.
It's just yes, this patient number was offered, and they said yes or no. And then also, if they view the ultrasound, did they have an abortion or not? The research tells us 80% of those women will view the ultrasound and say no. Well, this is a way to test that and see how it goes.
80%.
Yeah. And I certainly believe that, yeah.
And in some states, as you said, this has already been done and documented.
You bet.
Okay.
Yes.
I love to always hear, too, the story of the man behind the story. So tell us a little bit about Zack Wittman growing up. Where did you grow up? What was your family like?
I grew up in Bolingbrook, Illinois.
Where?
Bolingbrook. It's a suburb of Chicago by Joliet. Yeah.
Okay.
My parents don't live there anymore now. They live in Arkansas, but I had two sisters. Grew up. Well, as soon as I got out of high school, I joined the Marine Corps. Spent 4 years in the Marines. Went to college. Got my bachelor's degree in English. Master's degree in political science. Worked for Attorney General Jim Ryan for about a year. Yeah. And then was lucky enough to get this job, and I've been doing it ever since.
I don't think it's luck. I think you have earned it, and you're blessed.
Well, I'm very happy to have it. I feel very good about it. And I'm married, and I have 3 daughters.
And 3 daughters. Oh, there you go. So it's a man's world.
Not in my house.
Oh, I guess not. Well, who better than a dad of 3 girls? Think about it.
Sure.
Because I know as a high school teacher, when kids would come to me and say, "Oh, Miss Peppers, I think I'm pregnant. What am I going to do?" We just had a 25 reunion of one of our groups, and this particular girl, Melissa, I won't give her last name, but this was on HEC Higher Education Television where they were doing this. We had done a teen issues play back in 1987, and we just had the 25th anniversary. And this girl with big tears in her eyes, who is now in her 40s, said, "If it hadn't been for Mrs. Peppers," and she said, "and well, I might not have my daughter." And she didn't know if she could say God or not, but you know. And really, if one of your daughters, what ages are they?
Well, my oldest is 11.
Okay.
I have an 8-year-old and a 1-year-old.
Okay, so really they're not at that state
yet.
Not yet. And you believe, I mean, I know that as I was able to speak to the Quincy Catholic Church, High School, Notre Dame. I couldn't think of the name of it. And for those of you out there that are watching, I love these kids. They were absolutely awesome. And it was their homecoming week, and this was just a couple of weeks ago. And the kids came up and they gave reasons. I gave them every little detail and said, okay, now in this case, what about a woman who already has 14 children? She's been through this. Her husband has tuberculosis, and she's pregnant again. Wouldn't you say that she should have an abortion? And each one of these 6 kids that I just pulled at random up said, no, I still believe that that is not right. And I said, well, good, because if you had, you would have just killed off, and it was a famous gospel singer, and did one for Beethoven and other reasons. And then I said, what about a teenage girl, maybe 14, that is pregnant, and she is with this, she already has a fiance, but he's not the father of the baby. Shouldn't she have an abortion? And they said, nope, still shouldn't.
I'm glad to hear the Catholic schools are doing their job.
And you know who that would have been? Jesus.
Oh.
You would have just killed Jesus. His mother had to face Joseph and say, I'm with child, but it's not yours.
Sure.
Just think.
Absolutely.
And they are doing their job, and they're standing up for it, and I believe that. And abstinence is also, you know, that's part of the prevention plan. We aren't able to teach that in our classrooms. Well, I did, and the reason that I was able to is because you can give the other side as long as you are, you know, in a, well, we won't get into that. Right. But all of these are prevention, but what if? Has a Catholic teenager ever gotten pregnant before?
Absolutely.
Of course. I mean, you know, even in the churches, we're finding similar statistics. But the difference is there are wonderful homes. I have right now, I could give you 10 people that would love to adopt a precious little baby. And if you would give that birth and give that child the gift of life. This is what we used to do.
That's right.
So you grew up and you now have 3 girls.
Yes.
And if your eldest daughter, heaven forbid, came to you, there are beautiful places where that child would
Knowing my wife, we would not be giving any baby up for an adoption.
You'd just become parents.
That's right. We would do what we had to do. And, of course, my children are not quite old enough for this yet.
We don't even want to think about it.
But they will learn absolutely, that all life is precious, all life is equal, whether it's the moment of conception or the moment you take your last breath.
That's right.
You can't interfere with that.
Exactly.
That's what we believe.
And we believe that as well.
Sure.
And I think the Bible points that out.
Absolutely.
And so the other question is, what about our viewers that are watching right now that perhaps have had abortions, that are dealing with the guilt and the shame, and can they be forgiven?
Absolutely. Obviously, every faith has a different tradition about how that happens, but I know in the Catholic Church we have a thing, and I don't know if this is just Catholic, it might be broader than that, but a thing called Project Rachel.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, sure. Well,
I love that.
Where they, provide service and help and assistance to these women, because all sin is forgivable as long as you ask for it.
Yeah,
right?
David was a murderer and an adulterer, both.
Right.
If you're watching and you need help, you would like to get involved with this pro-life movement, you would like to be one of the phone callers, one of the fundraisers, one of the party organizers, however you want to do it. And we're talking to Democrats, we're talking to Republicans, we're talking to Catholics, we're talking to Methodists, we're talking to atheists even. We hope you won't stay that way, but we do pray that you would help us to give the gift of life, because God gives it first. All we can do is to help it to have the voice that it doesn't have. So we only have a couple of minutes left. We're going to give you the information again, the website and the phone numbers. And if they would like to just contact you, you could put them with Project Rachel. You could put them into, what if they wanted to help form a phone bank, even through their church or through their community organizations?
Sure, those are things that they should undertake, and if they needed advice on how to do that, we're available to give them that. Also, I mean, there's always some local resources. There's a group called Right to Life, which is county-based in Illinois. So not every county, but most counties have, it's Sangamon County Right to Life.
Okay.
So you can usually find them in the phone book.
Yes.
Or again, contact us and we'll help you.
That's right.
But those are people who have local expertise in how to set those things up, and it's certainly worth doing, and it can make a real difference.
Oh my goodness, yes. And I've just been so blessed in the last couple of months to be able to speak to a couple of pro-life groups. And I always share that my first introduction to abortion was not my own, but it was my best friend, who was 16 at the time. And her mother had worked for a doctor, and they had taken her to St. Louis to have this abortion before it was legal. And I went to pick her up, and she was in the bathtub sitting there. Her mother had gone to work. And I had to experience, without even knowing at the time what it was, here she was, and it was not a blob of tissue.
No.
I knew, she knew, and she has not been the same ever since, and I haven't either. To watch her mother come running home and take newspaper, wrap it up, throw it away, and say, you go to school. You go to school now, you're fine. We can't imagine, but we can do something.
Absolutely.
We can do something. So please get involved, whatever it is, phone calling, donations, support. Even if you just want to email Zack and say, good job, thank you for being on the front lines there. Anything else that you'd like to talk about that we might miss on this?
No, in Illinois, it's tough sometimes. People say, oh, well, we can never get by this. We can't pass any of these laws. We can't do anything. But, my view of this is God tells us to hope.
That's right.
And to follow that up with action. So the politics are not our way right now.
That's right.
But politics changes. It's the beauty of politics, is what I love about it. It changes.
Yes.
And it may be a long time. I don't know. I hope that it's not. I pray that it's not, but it could be. But we need to stay in there. It's our responsibility. God expects us to defend human life.
That's right.
So I hope everybody will.
And you're doing your part. Everybody else out there, you can do your part. Make those phone calls, support, and pray. This is coming up in January in Illinois. Pray that God would intervene in the hearts and the minds of the legislators that know in their heart of hearts that it's not just a blob of tissue. It's a baby. We know that. Zack, thank you for being with me. God bless you in your efforts.
Thank you, you too.
Thanks those of you that tune in to Outreach Connection. I'm Dr. Peppers, shaking the salt.
You've been watching Outreach Connection. If you would like to contact this ministry, you may write Outreach Connection, care of CTN, WTJR, 222 North 6th Street, Quincy, Illinois, 62301.
WTJR, licensed to Quincy, Illinois, maintains a public file for public inspection at our studio at 222 North 6th Street in Quincy, Illinois. Hours of our studio location, 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. Monday through Thursday, at 9 a.m. to noon on Friday.